dashes, hyphens, and other punctuations. Grammar tip. Many abbreviations are needlessly placed in parentheses. If you use the full term just once, there is little point in providing the abbreviation. Similarly, when all readers know what the abbreviation means, there is no reason for a parenthetical explanation, which could be seen as condescending. For instance, if your readers are British adults, they should know what BBC stands for, just as American readers understand the meaning of USA. Function 4. Specialized uses. Parentheses have a few other purposes, mostly relating to certain types of writing or situations. Below are 3 specialized uses. 1. In writing that incorporates formal research, most documentation systems call for parenthetical citations to indicate the writer's sources. 2 of the most common systems requiring parentheses are the MLA, Modern Language Association, and the APA, American Psychological Association. In all these systems, any ending period goes outside the parentheses. Example, the governor spent $450,000 on advertisements in the last month of the election. Green, 2018. 2. To enhance readability or emphatic, you can also place numbers or letters inside parentheses to separate related items, such as in a list. Keep the same grammatical structure after each parenthesis. Example, you need to provide 1. Evidence that your trip dealt with company business. 2. Receipts for all expenses for which you seek reimbursement. And 3. A written explanation covering why you took a 3-day detour to Miami. 3. Parentheses are also often used in technical writing, especially when dealing with mathematics, formal logic, chemistry, or computer sciences. Example, if A and B or C and D, then parentheses and other punctuation. No matter which function is involved, parentheses sometimes appear right next to other punctuation, most notably at the end of a sentence. The following guidelines apply to particularly any function of parentheses. For sentences ending with parentheses, the most common pattern by far involves a normal declarative sentence. It requires a period outside the closing parenthesis, usually with no end punctuation that appears immediately inside the closing parenthesis. Accordingly, none of the following 3 correct examples should have a period inside the parentheses. One major change with this product concerns its UPC, Universal Product Code. Rubber bands last longer when stored in a refrigerator. They can also be easier to find. A landmark study supports this claim, Fries and Snart 2001. As seen below, a final period is required even if whatever is inside parentheses is a question or an exclamation. But in those rare situations, place a question mark or an exclamation point immediately inside the final parenthesis. The only U.S. state having a name with just 1 syllable is Maine. Is this an important fact, really? The officer gave me a speeding ticket. I was only 10 miles over the limit. Grammar tip. Pretend to lift out everything inside the parentheses. Would you place a question mark or an exclamation point at the end of what you removed? If so, use the same punctuation inside the parenthesis when you put the material back where it belongs. Otherwise, do not put any punctuation at all right before the closing parenthesis. You will still need punctuation on some sort after the parenthesis, but this tip determines what punctuation, if any, goes immediately before the closing parenthesis. If the entire sentence is a question or an exclamation, place a question mark or an exclamation point outside the final parenthesis, regardless of what it is inside the parentheses. Again, there is no need for a period before the final parenthesis. Can you attend the interrogation of Mr. Nigma this Friday, 7:30 a.m. in room 111? On rare occasions, however, end punctuation is used twice. As seen in these 2 examples, place the question mark or the exclamation point inside the final parenthesis if that material by itself is a question or is exclaimed. Did you know that the movie Blade Runner is based on a novel by Philip K. Dick? Do androids dream of electric sheep? The officer gave me a speeding ticket. I was only 10 miles over the limit. Because the first sentence as a whole is a question, a second question mark is needed outside the parenthesis. The second sentence needs a period outside the final parenthesis, even though there is a nearby exclamation point for the parenthetical statement. If the entire parenthetical comment is a complete sentence, putting the comment entirely outside the previous sentence is optional. In such cases, place appropriate punctuation inside the final parenthesis, not after it. Frederick Barr invented the method for packaging Pringles. When he died, his ashes were buried in a Pringles can. Steve left work early today, or was it yesterday? Do not put a comma immediately preceding any initial parenthesis. A comma might be needed after the second parenthesis, but it has nothing to do with using parenthesis. When completing the required document, the project management report, be sure to initial each page. Shel Silverstein is known for his children's book, such as The Giving Tree, but he also wrote the song, A Boy Named Sue, made famous by country singer Johnny Cash. Brackets. In the United States, the word bracket by itself refers to a specific punctuation mark that always comes in pairs. Outside the United States, these are sometimes referred to as square brackets, except for specialized uses in technical fields. Example, phonetics, mathematics, and computer programming. Almost all brackets are limited to one basic purpose. Brackets equals setting off material that is inside a quotation, but not part of the actual quote. This general purpose leads to several more specific functions. Function 1, clarifying quoted material. First and foremost, brackets are used inside direct quotations in order to clarify wording that might otherwise be confusing, mainly because the quotation appears out of context. Clarifying a quoted pronoun is especially common, although other terms might also need a bracketed explanation. In her email to the chief engineer, Dr. Lander stated she, the assistant engineer, must request approval for additional supplies. The plaintiff said, my new employer, Dunder Mifflin Incorporated, offered a higher salary and better working conditions. Brackets can also clarify by translating foreign terminology, but only within a direct quotation. In other situations, use parentheses. Our Swahili friend wrote, although I hope we meet again, kwaheri, goodbye for now. I replied with the traditional Klingon farewell, kapla, success. Function 2, identifying errors. Brackets can indicate that you as the writer realize that a direct quotation contains an error, usually a grammatical or spelling mistake. Appearing immediately after the error, the bracketed material either corrects the error or uses the term sick, usually italicized, to point out that the mistake is not the writer's doing. You wrote in your report that you had enough of your supervisor's attitude. You wrote in your report that you had enough sick of your supervisor's attitude. While not the traditional approach, it is largely acceptable to use just the bracketed correction, omitting the original error. You wrote in a report that you had enough of your supervisor's attitude. Grammar trivia, a sick mistake. When used inside brackets, sick means as is, including the mistake. It is an old Latin word and, contrary to what some people believe, it is not an abbreviation that stands for something akin to, set in context, or spelled incorrectly. Function 3, indication of an omission. Brackets used with ellipses, spaced periods, indicate the place where you left out part of a direct quotation for the purpose of being more concise. Some style guides indicate that brackets are not needed with ellipses, but brackets clearly indicate that you added ellipses and that they were not in the original. In Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote, it was as if they stood at the window of some 11 tower, curtained with threaded jewels, kindled with an unconsuming fire. Function 4, making other stylistic changes. Brackets can indicate that you change someone's language to make part of the quote fit into your own syntax or style. The first sentence below uses lowercase rather than the original capital letter, and those to make it fit the way the sentence integrates the quote. The second example replaces Johnson's original. He was with us, so all pronouns in the sentence are plural and not gender specific. Take great care not to use new wording that distorts the original meaning. I agree with John F. Kennedy that those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly. As Samuel Johnson would remind us, our true measure as a people rests in how we treat someone who can do us no good. Grammar tip. Reading through numerous brackets or parentheses in a document is like reading through Venetian blinds. They interrupt the flow of reading, so use them sparingly and be as brief as possible with whatever goes inside them. If you are using brackets to get a quotation to fit into your sentence, consider rewording your sentence so that no brackets are needed at all. In addition, brackets can indicate the original words are deleted entirely because they were offensive or incomprehensible. According to the audio recording, the salesperson said, take your credit card and shop elsewhere. The customer walked away and said, "Fine, but I will talk to your supervisor before I go to." Finally, if you use a special font, for example, underlining, italics, and boldface to emphasize words, the conventional approach is to place emphasis added within the quotation. As Martin Luther King wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Emphasis added. Slashes. Despite a surprising number of functions, the slash is rarely used in formal writing. Although it appears relatively often in programming languages, web addresses, chemistry notations, and even some social media messages. Technically, this punctuation mark is a forward slash as opposed to the backslash that has no conventional use in formal writing. The term virgule in solidus referred to a forward slash, and at one time it was frequently called an oblique. We use slash to refer specifically to a forward slash. Grammar trivia. Getting medieval with slashes. In medieval times, the slash was sometimes used in places where we now use a comma. Today's slash has almost no connection to commas. An exception is a slash that indicates line breaks in poetry, a function that still retains a semblance of the pause, quality of commas. Almost all slashes in formal writing come down to one overarching purpose. A slash indicates a close connection between letters, numbers, words, or lines. Regardless of its specific use, a slash rarely has a space right before or after it. The exception deals with lines from a poem or song, as discussed below. What's the problem? The problem with the slash involves the first 3 of the 5 functions we described below. Put briefly, readers might not know whether a slash is used to combine a pair of word stands for or, versus, or and. Indeed, the most common function of a slash is non-technical writing, is to connect 2 words, but only in specific cases. Some instances allow either a hyphen or a slash, but not always. As seen in the following 2 sentences, hyphens and slashes can have different meanings. Use your student-teacher discount, a discount for someone who is both a student and a teacher. Use your student-teacher discount, a discount for someone who is either a student or a teacher. Although context can clarify such matters, it is best to avoid a slash for combining words unless you are sure that it is used clearly and correctly. Even when the slash is technically correct, consider the alternatives, such as replacing the slash in the last example above with the coordinating conjunction, or, as in student or teacher discount. When using a slash effectively, it will usually achieve one of the following purposes. Function 1, to mean or. As noted, a slash can mean or, as in one or the other of something, but not both. This type of slash, even though it can almost always be replaced by or, is one of the most common uses. Each person should complete his or her own report. Your grading for this course will be pass or fail. Every man or woman who served in the military will receive a discount. We can begin the meeting only if or when the CEO arrives. You can use this voucher for lunch and or dinner. The last sentence above might appear to refer to both words, and or. However, and or is still making a distinction between 2 options. Using the voucher for both meals or using it for just one. Grammar tip. When combining 2 words, the slash meaning or is the most widely accepted function of a slash. Unlike some other slashes, this type can never be replaced by a hyphen because a hyphen will never mean or. Thus, if you can replace a slash with or, you almost certainly made a correct choice, even if some readers would rather you simply use or instead. The term and or is a rare exception to replacing the slash with or. Function 2, the mean versus. Some slashes take the or distinction between ideas further by indicating a conflict or competition. This function is effective only when the sentence and context make this meaning clear. In the following examples, the noun after each italicized term helps readers interpret the slash as versus. This slash cannot be replaced by or, and a hyphen would incorrectly indicate a collaborative, rather than competing, relationship between 2 ideas. The liberal or conservative division in this state has intensified. I am interested in the Cowboys or Eagles game this week. The creationism or evolution debate is far from settled in many areas of the country. A rural or urban rivalry arose once the government cut agricultural funding. Function 3, to mean and. For better and for worse, a slash is often used to replace the coordinating conjunction and. More specifically, think of this slash as emphasizing how something is both X and Y. Singer and songwriter. Someone who is both a singer and a songwriter. Closet and bedroom. A place that is both a closet and a bedroom. Love and hate relationship. A connection based on both love and hate. Important. This use of a slash is the most precarious of all its functions. Some style guides discourage or prohibit a slash meaning, and because people overuse it, especially when a hyphen is needed or preferred, see our previous discussion on hyphens with compound nouns and adjectives. Even so, an occasional slash can sometimes effectively mean both X and Y, much like certain hyphens. Compared to a hyphen, a slash creates a firmer boundary between X and Y so that the reader understands that X is not modifying Y. We suggest using this slash only when a hyphen might not convey the intended meaning, especially for readers unfamiliar with a given term or idea. My cousin is interested in the MA and MFA program at a nearby university. To readers unfamiliar with graduate programs, MA to MFA can suggest a progression from an MA to MFA, or perhaps a type of MFA. Paolo is our secretary and treasurer. Readers unfamiliar with organizational titles might assume that the hyphenated form is a type of treasurer, rather than one person being both secretary and treasurer. We will study the legacy of the Reagan-Bush approach to economics. For many readers, Reagan-Bush can suggest a progression from one president to another, but the slash can refer to an approach formulated by both men and not necessarily just during their presidencies. In some, use a slash to stand for and only when the hyphenated form might be confusing. Function 4, to indicate a line break. In contrast to the above three functions, some slashes do not involve meaning. They just show where a line break originally occurred in something you are quoting, such as lines from a poem, song lyrics, or any instance when the original line break is important. Normally, one sets off such lines by indenting all of them and providing line breaks, exactly as they appear in the original work. The slash is used only when you directly quote two or more lines within your own sentence. In a poem about the Cuban Missile Crisis, Margarita Engel describes what she did in school during duck and cover drills. Hide under a desk, pretend that furniture is enough to protect us against perilous flames, radiation, contamination, toxic breath. The rock song, Sweet Child O' Mine, by Guns N' Roses begins with a loving tribute to one band member's girlfriend. She's got a smile, it seems to me, reminds me of childhood memories, where everything was as fresh as the bright blue sky. Because this type of slash combines more than just two words, it is the only slash that can have a space before and after. Function 5, to abbreviate and condense numbers, dates, and ratios. Although usually considered informal at times, a slash can serve as shorthand for concepts involving numbers or ratios. Below are instances of the abbreviating slash. Outside the United States, these conventions might differ, often calling for a hyphen instead. To stand for a per in ratio, $15 per hour wage, a speed of 65 miles per hour, gas mileage of 40 miles per gallon. Summary. Dashes come in two forms, the M dash and the N dash, which is shorter than the M dash but longer than a hyphen. The N dash is normally only the concern of publication specialists and can normally be replaced by a hyphen. The M dash is often considered informal but has several legitimate functions. All functions involve a dash being used to set off words from the rest of the sentence, but only in certain situations and sentence structures. A hyphen combines two or more language choices into one idea. A hyphen should be used only in certain circumstances, such as spelling out fractions, 1/5, or indicating a range, 2012 through 2019. The most common use of parentheses is setting off extra ideas for the rest of a sentence. The words inside parentheses should not be grammatically essential to the rest of the sentence. Brackets are primarily used to set off clarifying material that is placed inside a direct quotation, but is not part of the original quote. And a slash is used in special circumstances to indicate certain connections between letters, numbers, or words. One of the more common functions is to stand for or, he or she.